And we have a great session now, right, Roger? We have,
Yeah.
yeah. So go ahead.
Okay. So yeah. So next we have Mike Matthews, and you know, uh, I've known him a short while, but we've come across each other on these tech casts, and the thing I can give you all his creds, but what I'd like to actually call out is that he's got a great sense of humor. He's always ready for a bit of a laugh, but he does know his topic well. What you probably don't know about Mike is that he's a closet chef. Mike, I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about that. It's got to be more productive.
Yeah, not a very good one, Roger. I think that's the problem. And I think the main reason I wasn't particularly good at that, yeah, many years ago was I was a little bit too experimental. So we'll see what happens today when I do my demos, whether I experiment too much and fall foul of that. It may well happen again. I'm gonna have to remind myself to stick to the recipe. But yes, it's something in my dim and distant past.
Yeah, very good. Well, Mike, thank you for coming today, and thank you for sharing with us. I'll open the floor to you, and we'll go off camera. Have your wicked way with us.
Well, thanks very much, Roger. Thank you, Adel, as well, and Carrie for inviting me today. I'm very pleased to be here with you all. My name is Mike Matthews. I've been a product manager at Oracle for several years now, since the startup I worked for in Cambridge in the UK was bought back in 2011. And I have a number of years, quite a number of years now, working in fields related to data lakehouses, so particularly data quality, data governance, and data integration. But today's topic, we're going to talk about the built-in data tools that are currently available as part of the Oracle Autonomous Database, and also a little bit about what our plans are for them potentially over the coming time. And I'm going to try and keep this not too much based on PowerPoint, and actually show you as much of the tools as I can in the time. As I say, I might go off script a little bit, and if I do, we'll see how things go. But we're going to do live demos as far as possible. But before we get to that, just a little bit of introduction. So we're talking about data lakehouses today. And I think the helpful thing to do is to think of the autonomous database as really like the house in the lake, if you like. And so let's also talk about the approaches towards analytics, right? So this is kind of well understood, and probably most of you are fully aware of this. But obviously, in the world of sort of databases and analytic systems, you have your transaction processing online systems that are operational, right? So they're dealing with high volume transaction data. They're optimized towards inserts and writes. And on the right-hand side, you have your databases, your data warehouses used for analytic processing, right? So they're optimized for high volume selects and things like that. And it's on the right-hand side where, if you like, the autonomous data warehouse sits, and on the left-hand side, if you like, the autonomous transaction processing flavor of the autonomous database sits. But obviously, in order to gain the best benefit from analytics, you need something that's geared towards the type of analytics that you're trying to provide. And of course, there are different types of analytics that are needed in order to get the very best value from the data that powers your business. And so this is just to give some examples of that. So on the left-hand side, if you like, the sort of simplest form of, if you like, operational reporting. So that's about really just understanding today what you need to understand. So printing out an electricity bill for a customer is a good example of that. And then moving a little bit further, you may want to understand trends, historical trends, understand the past. So that's where, you might look at renewable power generation trends and things like that. And then we move towards sort of predictive analytics. And this is where it can get a little bit more interesting, predicting the future, forecasting energy demands for the next 30 years. So that's combining, historical analysis with machine learning and things like that can help you predict the future. And then stream analytics, helping you sort of shape the future. So this is where, based on a combination of events that are currently happening now and your other things here, the historical trends and the predictive analytics, you can start to immediately respond to users, and perhaps you can show advertisements that are relevant to them and things like that. Now, obviously, the basics of those kind of requirements are that you're going to, at some point, you're going to need to be able to move data and reshape data. And so data integration and transformation becomes a really critical thing for you to get analytics correct, and for you to make analytics as powerful as you can within the business. So simple examples of that, if you like, these are classic sort of data warehousing paradigms, but this is where data that's coming from source applications, manufacturing, marketing, sales, has to be transported into your data warehouse somehow, and it will often then need to be shaped and reshaped into a format that's ideal for that sort of analytic query-based processing. And the right-hand side of this slide here has a typical sort of star schema that's reporting on sort of products, customers, orders, times, and so forth. Now, all of that can become quite complex, potentially. There's potentially quite a lot of software involved, and there's quite a lot of learning involved to put one of these things together. And I think it's fair to say that 10, 15 years ago, these were very big IT projects, things that took a very long time to try and get from A to B. And the problem with that is it reduces your agility. It makes it more difficult to respond to requirements if you have to, excuse me, push them over to a specialist IT group that take a little bit of time to turn things around. And the other thing is that it can be very difficult to have good data governance if you have so many tools involved in the chain that's pulling data from A to B. So, often these things, if everything goes well, you can put a good construction together, but often your sort of analytical landscape becomes a sort of continuous building site where everything's a little bit behind schedule. So this is just an example, really, if you like, of a modern data lakehouse implementation. And of course, we see, specialist tools that are built up for parts of that flow that I showed you. So for sort of data loading, initial data loading, you might have something like Fivetran. You might have Amazon S3 or something like this used for cloud storage. You then might be using dbt for transformation. You might be using Snowflake as a cloud data warehouse, and then Power BI and Tableau for analytical tools. Now, all of those things are extremely good at what they do. But you have, with each of those tools, you have learning to do, you have things that can go wrong, and it can be difficult to be agile to changes that need to flow through all of those things in order to get to the far end and to the sort of actual business intelligence that you're trying to build. So our mission statement, if you like, is to make the autonomous database absolutely central to the data lakehouse vision, and to make it really cover as many of those use cases as we can and provide an integrated solution from a single vendor. So I'm going to talk about data tools today, but within the converged database, the autonomous database, we have, in addition to those things, we have built-in machine learning, built-in graph, built-in Oracle Spatial. There's a lot of capability there that allows you to build that kind of picture with a much more simple landscape. And that's not to say that, if you are wanting to use something like S3 as your cloud storage, you can continue to do so, and the autonomous database can connect to it in exactly the same way it can connect to Oracle Object Store. If you want to use, your existing ETL product for data load, you of course can. But if you're looking at something as a greenfield data lakehouse, you may want to consider using our built-in tools. And of course, over time, we'll be looking to build those out, improve them, and make them provide this really strong integrated solution. So that's the sort of plan, and that's what I'm going to try and show you as we step through today. So most of the rest of the time, I'm going to try and do a demo. Okay, and the demo is going to follow these 5 steps. Now, the good thing about this demo is it's really built on a live lab that's available on Oracle Live Lab. So at the end of this presentation, there'll be a link. You can try this stuff out for yourself. There's one part of it which is not quite yet fully generally available. I'll talk about that when I get to it, but it's coming very soon. Everything else is available now, and the live lab will, allows you to work through that anyway, that limitation. Now, the intention here is obviously not to show a full sort of implementation of a lakehouse, but it is to show across the breadth of some of those capabilities that we have, and to show some of those how the data tools can really help you in coming up with a consistent way to load and analyze your data. So first step, we're going to prepare our workspace. We're going to provision a data platform, okay? And in order to do that, we're going to just log on to the Oracle Cloud. I've logged on already here. I might have to log on again because it's logged on a while ago. And bottom right-hand side here, we have a link to create an autonomous data warehouse database. So this is going to be our house, if you like, in the lake house. I'm just going to click on that link and go through these steps just to show the typical provisioning process. That's quite simple, really, to set up an ADW instance for our purposes. So I'm just going to create a database here. I mustn't use underscore. There we go. Not use an underscore. So we're going to set up a data warehouse. Normally we'd set that to run up on shared infrastructure. If you have the appropriate license, you can set it up as a dedicated instance as well. You can set any number of OCPUs. We only need one for our purposes today, but you have those options available to you, and you have the auto scaling options as well. And I'm just going to specify a password for the database. We want secure access from anywhere, and we want to use license included, and we're going to create. So this process takes usually a couple of minutes to provision ourselves a new autonomous database. And then once we have it, we immediately have access to the data tools that I'm going to be talking about today. So things like the ability to load data, the ability to transform data, which is in beta right now, but becoming generally available very soon. We have a built-in data analysis tool, built-in data insights tool. We have a catalog, and a few other little features that we'll cover once the database has got itself going. So once this is live, the first part of the demonstration I'm going to try and do is just create a new database user, because we're going to be logging in as admin. So when we log in as admin for the first time, obviously its intention is as an administration user. So the first thing we'd normally do is to create a user for our purposes. If this takes a little bit too long, I can always switch to one that I prepared earlier, but it should be available for me pretty soon. And there we go. So you can see I've got a few options here for the database at the top, but what we want to do is go straight to database actions, which is, if you like, the home page for all of the things that you can access immediately for the database. Right? So this will probably come up. You may be familiar with this page already. It's where you would access things like SQL Developer Web, which is obviously very frequently used. Our main focus today is going to be on data tools, but before we go there, we're just going to create a new user. So let's create a database user. And the lab uses the user Q team, quality team. So we're going to follow the lab as far as we can. Now we need web access, because that user is going to be logging in to the web. We'll use an unlimited quota. We'll switch on machine learning. It's not actually necessary for the lab, but it's a useful thing for later. And then we need to apply the right permissions. So let's see here. We want, we get some permissions by default, but we want DW role. We have that, that's good. And that should do for our initial stages. The lab is very slightly different, but this will do for what we want to do right now. So if I just create the user. Now, so the user then there's a web link which allows me just to open that link. And now I can log on as that user. Could also bookmark this if need be. Okay. Now, the first stage in our journey here, we've done the preparation of our platform, we've created our database, is to have a look at the data tools and to start using them to gather our raw materials. So what we want to do in this case is load some data into the database. So we're going to use the data load tool. Okay, so I'm going to click on data load. Now, this is really nice and simple to use. What it allows you to do is to load data from cloud storage, and that cloud storage could be any of the modern cloud platforms. So it could be Oracle Object Store, but it can equally be Amazon S3, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. And the load tool can also load data from many sort of common sites and things. So it can load data from GitHub, for example. In addition to the ability to load data into the database, we can link to it. So we can keep the data resident in the data lake, but create external tables in the database that allow us to use that data as if it were a table, but linking directly to it. And that's very useful, especially if your data is big data, it's changing all the time, and it's just coming in perhaps as a set of Parquet files in a certain folder in your cloud storage. You may just want to create a link that's over all of those Parquet files, and that they act as a table. So we can do that through the linked data. The third option here, which again, I'm not going to show today, but it allows a continuous feed of data to come in from cloud storage into the database. So it's a bit like loading, but it works on a continuous basis. Now, for the purposes of my demo today, I've got a few CSV files locally. I'm also going to show loading from a cloud location, but it's really just to show how simple it is to do that. So we're going to load some files locally first. I can drag and drop the files, or I can just select them. These are the 3 files I want to load. So I've got some Excel, a couple of Excel spreadsheets, and a CSV file in this case. Okay, I'm just going to load that in. Now I had 3 files, but I've actually got 4 cards here. And the reason for that is that one of my Excel spreadsheets has 2 worksheets. So it has days and months in it. So those are getting pulled in to be loaded into 2 separate tables. So I can have a look at the cards to check the settings and see what my columns are going to be in the tables. And you can see it derives, in this case, the headers from the CSV file. You can see that it's detected the encoding of the file. If I'm absolutely sure that's wrong, I can change that. Equally, the same with things like the text enclosure, the field delimiter, all of this. So I've got various options here. I can set the column type if I want to. In this case, I'm going to use the auto capability, which will just detect the appropriate amount of length in the actual data and create a column that's comfortably big enough for that size. I can preview the data from file, so I can see what the data is going to look like in my table. And I can do that for the other cards, but in this case, I know it's going to work. At least I hope so. And so I can just click run. And that's just going to run that data in from my local files into the autonomous database. Really easy and quick to do. Okay. And if I want to, I can have a quick look at the catalog, which will show me those tables. I can just check the data's loaded properly. So let's just have a look at my countries table, have a look at the statistics. That will give me an indication of what the data looks like. So I've got 64 distinct values in country, and they're all occurring once. That looks good. Continent, that looks all very sensible. I can have a look at the preview, and I can show the lineage. I can show the fact that that table was created from a data load job, from a CSV file, and I can see that that came from my local file system. So far, so good. Okay, so I'm going to go back to database actions. And this time we're going to load some data from a cloud location. So I'm going to add a cloud location. Now, in this case, this is a public bucket. So I'm just going to call it demo. This is all I need to do is paste in my URL. I could go and get that from object store. Again, this could be, you know, an Amazon S3 location. It could be a Google Cloud Platform location. It doesn't really matter. And this is quite nice. So I think I've got the URL slightly wrong, actually. Let me just check that. Okay. I thought that was right, actually. Let me just, I'm hoping this is right. No files at the location. Well, that's not very convenient.
It's specifically designed like this so that it gives you a bit of excitement during your demo.
Yeah, that's very interesting because this was working just beforehand, but let me just double check my URL. And if this doesn't work, I do have an alternative to work around. So let me just see if I've got this slightly wrong. It could be that someone's moved my data. Yeah, it's not working. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have to load that data from local file, which I think fortunately I do have. Perhaps I don't. Well, that's a little bit interesting. Hold on just 1 second. Okay. These are the perils with live demos. I think someone has moved my data when I wasn't looking. So I'm going to switch to my database that has this stuff already and just see if I can show you the proper experience of this. I can just move this out of the way. Let's move to database I created earlier. And this will tell me at least if the cloud location is at fault or not. Well, I have this location. It looks the same to me. So let me just check that it's working here. Okay. So, well, for the purposes of this, let me just double check. Okay. We'll run it up from here. That's fine. So we have the location set up here, and the way it will work is we'll go into our load tool. In this case, we're going to pick Cloud Store, and that then allows us to work with either pre-saved locations like this one, or if I had a URL for a different location, I could just paste it in here, and provided that URL is of a sort of supported type of Cloud Store, I could interrogate and check for any supported files that are in that store. So the supported types are things like CSV files, text files, tab delimited files, Parquet, Avro, and so on. In this case, I just have a CSV file in that location, so I just want to drag that over to the right-hand side. And I suspect it will find, in this case, that I've created this table already, which is why it suggested a target table with an _1 on it, but you'll get the idea. So we can have a look at the task again. So again, slightly more complicated file, but nothing too difficult going on. So we've got a number of columns. You'll see it's detected that there's a couple of numbers here. Similarly, if there are dates in the file, it will detect the date format, and you can change these formats if you want to, but all of those are derived from the files. And I will run that, even though I have that data in a sort of alternative table already. And this is just to give an indication that you can set up these load tasks to run both from local files and from cloud storage locations. Perhaps I had the URL slightly wrong before, I'm not sure.
There was a suggestion in the chat to use the bucket link instead of the object link.
Ah, that's what I did wrong. I'm sure that's what it was. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It shows the value of some of that. Let me just fix that since we're there. I'm sure that's absolutely what it was. Yeah, public bucket. I think that's what I did wrong. Let's just see if I can get that working here as well then. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Well, so good I did it twice, so that's fine. We can load that up from here as well, just to prove that it works on a new database as well.
Yeah, we all learned from it too. Right?
Yeah, mistakes are good. Let's hope that's true anyway. Right, so we're good at running on 2 different databases. Can't go wrong. It's finished on my other database here. We're just going to let that run here, and perhaps just trust that that's going to run through correctly. Okay, I can see the progress happening now. So that's a little demonstration of the data loading step. Okay. Now, the next thing is we need to prepare our ingredients. So we're going to have to transform the data. Now, this is something that's coming very soon to a database near you. But what it is actually is we've pulled in essentially our Oracle Data Integrator Web Edition product into the autonomous database, so that every autonomous database gets a full instance of Oracle Data Integrator Web Edition essentially built in. And that's actually a very powerful thing, because in addition to the sort of simple cases I've just shown you of just being able to load data from object storage or link to it from object storage, Oracle Data Integrator Web Edition can pull in data from all sorts of other places. So it can pull in from Fusion applications, from NetSuite, from other databases. You know, most of the connectivity options that Oracle Data Integrator has are also available in Web Edition, and Web Edition has some additional connectors. And of course, we're also, building up our menu of connectors all the time. And in addition to being able to load data from those sources, it also comes with a very rich tool palette of transformation capabilities that are built into the database. So when you're loading in data, you can then transform it straight away and make it suitable for analytics purposes. Why might that be necessary? Well, let's have a look at this movie sales data. Okay, now this is, in this case, it's going to have a couple of just very simple little data issues that we're going to have to sort out. Okay, and we'll be able to see those straight away from our statistics view. So this is where the autonomous database gives you tools that will immediately show the kind of issues that you might need to resolve. So we look at this sort of data and it looks fine, but I notice on our days column, we have 14 distinct values, and that's probably not what we want. So we're just going to have a drill down into that, and we can see we've got some data with different casing here. Okay, so this is something that we're going to have to sort out. Now, it's a simple transformation. We could do it as SQL, but just for the purposes of this, we're going to show you how you can use the built-in transforms capability to resolve this kind of issue. And of course, it can do a whole lot more than that. Okay, so the next bit of this is actually a pre-recorded demo, but I'm going to talk through it a little bit. I might have to sort of skip this on a bit because I've lost a little bit of time in my mistakes made in the previous screens. If that's the case, I can always just skip forward a bit. It's fine, we can just show. But the idea here is just to give you an indication of what data transforms will bring into the database, which we're quite excited about. It's a lot of capability. It's capability that's been built up over many years, really, in the Oracle Data Integrator product, and which is now available just from your browser and will shortly be available from any autonomous database instance. So you can see that we're creating a data flow here. We're not restricted to data flows just in our autonomous database. We can actually use this built-in data integrator capability, if you like, to pull in from all sorts of different connections. In this case, we're actually taking data that's already been loaded into the database, and we're just going to transform it. But we could easily be pulling data from an on-premise system. So in our schema here, you see I've got the movie sales 2020 data entity, that table. I'm just going to put that onto the canvas. And there's a number of different families of processing. You can see across the top here, the ribbons. In this case, we just need to do some simple data cleansing on that data to resolve this problem with the days field. So we drag the data cleanse tool on, and we connect that up. And then it's just a case of some very simple configuration of that tool. It's always good practice to give it a proper name. So we're going to fix the days column. And the descriptions are helpful as well. One of the reasons that's a good idea is that when we show data lineage, so when we're showing the flows of data through these data flows that we're constructing here, if everything's named correctly, it will make that data lineage view more rich, and it will be clearer to anyone using the target data where it comes from and how it's being derived. So we'll pick our day column. We want to make sure there's no leading or trailing white space, so we'll just tick that option there. And the other thing that we need to do is to modify the case. So we're just going to modify that title case. That's actually all we need to do in this case. So you can see that there's some other data cleansing options we could use within this tool. That's a really, a nice simple case. This is what we need to do to fix the day column. And then when we've done that, all we need to do in this case is write out the data to a new table. So we just click on the option there to create a new table. Now you'll notice we're writing that in this case to our autonomous database. But again, if we have a connection set up to another system, we could potentially be writing it somewhere else. So this tool can be used to, with a number of autonomous databases, potentially to write the data there. Okay. So we select our options. We've got all of the columns in this case. You can see that we could choose to filter some of those, change the column sets. We can have a quick preview what it looks like, and we're going to save it. And I might skip ahead at this point because I think we're getting the general gist of what we're doing. I think very quickly, this just shows the options to show that we support different types of loads. So this is going to create a new table, but we also have options to do things like drop and create or to append. You can choose if you want to create indexes at the same time, if you want to add constraints at the same time. You have lots of different options, all the same things that Oracle Data Integrator gives you. And I'm just going to skip slightly. So all that happens really is the user clicks on the run button to start the data flow, and then you can see the progress of the job. And we can see it creates a new table and loads it. And you can see the row count. So it loads 500,000 records. And then we are done with the data transformation step. So where are we here now? Okay, so the next stage, we've created now a table of data that's a bit more useful for us to analyze. And so we're going to switch into the data analysis tool. Okay, so I'm going to move to my existing database here. And I'm a bit conscious of time, so I may run out of time here. Let me just move this. So I'll give you a quick view of data analysis, and then we'll see whether we've got time to go any further. So the analysis tool allows you to create analytic views. Analytic views are very powerful things. They offer standardized structures to ensure that you have a very consistent and optimized way of analyzing your data. So in this case, what I want to do is actually create a brand new analytic view. And that's going to be over that transformed table that we've just seen. I'm conscious, I'm thinking we probably don't have time to run through the full steps of this. But what this creation wizard will do is it will automatically analyze the data in your database. It will look for joins and things. So I'm just going to let this wizard run, but I might just sort of skip ahead and show you what it does. But what it'll do is it'll look for the tables in your database, in your schema, and it'll look for related tables, bring those together, automatically work out what your reporting dimensions and measures might be. And then, of course, you've got the opportunity, if you want to change those, that model that it creates. So it creates an automatic model for you by analyzing the data. And it does that actually pretty quickly. But if you want to, you can modify all of the aspects of that. Okay, so I'm going to leave that running. But while it runs, I'm going to try and switch to, actually, let's just let it run. Let's see if I can let it run. I don't think it's going to take an awful lot longer. I possibly do have time. Okay, so we can close that. So this is the analytic view demonstrated within the UI. So we can see how it's composed. So we've got, in this case, we've got our fact table in the middle here, movie sales 2020. and it's automatically worked out the links to our dimension tables that we've also loaded up, okay? And it's created hierarchies for us for reporting. Now let's just have a look at a couple of those. So this one, it's correctly rolled up continent and country, but let's say we want to call that a geography. Perhaps that would be a better name. We'll call that geography hierarchy. And then with our days hierarchy, perhaps we want to call it day. And let's have a look at the levels here. Okay, and actually the sort here, we've got a column we can sort by. So we're going to sort by day, num, USA. And the rest of these options here drive the way that the analytic view is seen by reporting tools. So it knows what the right caption is to display and things like that. So under months, same thing. We just need to change the sort by to month num. And let's have a look at the measures. So it's worked out measures for us. Now sales is a dollar amount. So let's just format that correctly. Leading, so that's a dollar amount. And then purchases, that's just a simple number. So we don't need to add any formatting for that. You can add your own calculations. So you can add built-in calculations that are part of the analytic view and which are therefore going to be consumed by whatever analytic tool you have, whether that's Oracle Analytics Cloud or Tableau or something like Excel can also read this analytic view metadata. And we know that if multiple of those tools are using the same analytic view, they will all be able to come up with the right answer in terms of the calculations and things. They're already standardized. And we know that the SQL that they use is going to be fully optimized. So this gives you a view of data quality and it checks that there's no issues. Now I've got an error count there, and I suspect that's something to do with the duplication of tables that I've created here. So maybe if I'll just switch to my previous view here. Yeah, this one is the right one. So this one has no data quality errors. Now I can push this analytic view into a product like Oracle Analytics Cloud, but we can also have a look right within the tool here to check that the data is looking like it makes sense. So we have a built-in analytic tool. Now really the purposes of this is a lot of the time it's for sanity checking. So I can have a look at my sales by customer segment. I can filter the data if I want to, and the views and things will automatically adjust. You can see those numbers just change slightly. I can have a look at tablets, and I can put little graphs together quickly that allow me to just check that the data makes sense. Okay, that gives you a flavor of how you can use the built-in tools to start analyzing your data. That's not to say it's intended to replace an analytics tool, but it shows when you're building those views, you can check that they're correct, and you can start to get an indication of what your data might be telling you, how your users might need to interrogate that data correctly. Okay, the final stage of this is really just to give an indication of how that analytic view might be used, but also how we're building in support for simple tools to make sure we have very easy access to the data in the database. So let's see, we've skipped through here. Next slide. Let me just skip through to the Excel plugin. So this is the last stage. Now this is what that analytic view would look like in a tool like Oracle Analytics Cloud. So exactly the same ways of slicing and dicing the data. We know that that's going to be consistent because we've created the view, and we know it's going to be performance optimized because that analytic view will automatically do all the hard work for us in making sure the SQL that it operates is simple and optimized in the database. Okay, this is a new feature that's been added recently on the right-hand side here. You can see there's an add-in for Excel, and we have more add-ins coming for things like Google Sheets. But what that allows you to do is to get a very easy connection from Excel to the database. And this is an example. I think just for the purposes of time, I'm probably not going to show sort of a live demo of all of this, but I do have an Excel spreadsheet here which is talking to my autonomous database. So I can sign in. And that's connected me now to the database, which allows me to run SQL directly against it. So I will try just creating a new sheet, and then let's just run some native SQL. So let's see if I can do something here. I'll quickly grab some SQL that I can run. Okay, write a query. Okay, and I'm going to select the pivot table option. So the add-in, without having any kind of additional installation, it's created for me a pivot table based on the data in my spreadsheet. So the query here is running the query that I just ran and gives me the data, so I can see the data in Excel and I can work with it in whatever way I see fit. But I've also got a pivot table, which I can change, I can add to. I can start exploring the data using as many of the dimensions and things as I want to. So if I want to just easily manipulate the data in Excel, I can do that, and then I can send this spreadsheet to someone and it's connected, and they just get the data. And if they have the rights to, they can log into the database as well and start running queries and constructing. And of course, if they haven't, then they'll just get the analysis that we give them. So in addition to be able to run the raw SQL, we can also talk to those analytic views. So here's an example of analytic view SQL. Now, in this case, I didn't write SQL myself. I just connected using a wizard to that analytic view. And this is a pivot table that's built on top of that view. So it uses the dimensions already created for me. And you can see I've got some options down the right-hand side. It just makes it really easy to use the data in the autonomous database with, a very commonly chosen client before we start looking at things like how I'm going to implement this with something like Tableau or Oracle Analytics Cloud. It gives you immediate access to the data. Okay, so everything I've looked at today is available on YouTube. So this how to build a cloud data mart demo in 20 minutes. You can go through the steps yourself. And of course, the advantage of doing that is you won't make mistakes like I did early on. And there's also a live lab that supports this on Oracle Live Labs. So again, all of the steps are available here. Either you can just watch the video or you can do it yourself. Okay. So that's all I had in terms of the presentation. And we've got a bit of time now to deal with questions, I think, before the next person's up.
We've got a few for you here.
Okay.
Okay, so Steve Rudland asks, will we be able to migrate existing ODI objects into the ODI web edition included in ADW?
Yes, at the moment the answer to that is no. If they're Oracle Data Integrator Classic implementations, so if those implementations are unfortunately not really portable or migratable in, we are looking at ways to migrate in. If you're using Oracle Data Integrator Web Edition, that is basically the same thing. So we're looking at ways of migrating that in. I think that is, is possible. We don't have a kind of really easy wizard for that, but I think it is possible to do that. The other thing is, of course, you can continue, if you have Oracle Data Integrator Web Edition separately deployed from the marketplace, you can continue to use that. And you can actually have the card on the autonomous database essentially pointing to that instance if you want to. But yes, unfortunately, the Oracle Data Integrator Classic, because it has a different UI and it can construct slightly different data flows, those unfortunately are not automatically migratable in. That would be a very nice thing if we could do it more easily, but I think it's quite a challenge.
Well, thank you. He also asks, does ODI Web allow the use of custom knowledge modules?
Yes, I believe so. Certainly you can select knowledge modules. I'm not totally sure if you can do custom ones. That's a really interesting question. I might have to check on that point. You can certainly select from the knowledge modules that are installed. I'm not totally sure about the custom question. Might have to get back to you on that. This is another reason for me to join the Slack channel.
Yeah, no, very good.
Yep.
So, and then Rishi, Rishikesh Kopkar. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Um, he says, is OCI DI going to be sunset as a separate service and instead integrated into ADW? Or will both these transformation tools coexist in the future?
Yeah, the latter. So it's a coexistence. So they have slightly different remits, I suppose, although there's clearly some similarities between them. But the tool that's built into the database is sort of designed for those typical sort of ELT workflows that are centered on a sort of data lakehouse. The OCI data integration tool kind of lives outside of that. So a lot of the time, that's going to be pushing down Spark jobs that are running to sort of pull data into OCI. So the two things will continue to exist separately. Yeah.
Okay, there are a few more here. Let me just
Yeah.
we'll whip through. I might have to pause them to get on with our next presentation. But
Yep.
data transformation is done from OCI integration, or is it an option in ADW?
Yeah, not an option. So what we're doing is building it into every ADW instance. So you set up an autonomous data warehouse within very, very soon anyway, and you will get data transforms, which, if you like, is the same thing as Oracle Data Integrator Web Edition, but built into the autonomous database. So you can, of course, use other data integration tools, including OCI data integration, but we're providing a built-in instance of data transforms. Yeah.
Okay, and again from Rishikesh Kopkar, does the analytical view support role-based data filters like OAC?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. OAC can certainly read data from analytic views, so you can pull in analytic views, and if you have that allows you to pull that whole model into OAC and makes the construction of reports in OAC much simpler because it already understands the dimensions and hierarchy. And as I say, it's fully optimized. We know that the SQL is going to run super fast.
Brilliant.
Not sure about the role-based thing. Yeah.
Okay, then Lina Marcela Torres says, is the lab's data downloadable? I'm pretty sure you said it was.
Yeah, so the lab uses data in public buckets. So, or in the case of local files, it just provides those local files directly in the lab. So you can just download them to your PC first. So you can absolutely do the flow that I did, and you can probably do it better than me. Yeah.
Right, brilliant. So with that, Matthew, really thank you. I enjoyed that presentation, and believe me, the bits where you have a sort of a hiccup in the presentation, actually they teach us all. So, and apart from things apart from humility. So, I really enjoyed the
You're,
session. Thank you.
you're too kind. Thanks a lot. Yeah.